Our epistle reading this morning is the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians 13 and verses 1 through 13. Nobody is getting married today. And yet still we get the beautiful love chapter all to ourselves on a Sunday morning. And so listen to this, perhaps the second most favorite chapter in the entire Bible after Psalm 23. 1 Corinthians 1:13. 1 Corinthians 13:1. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, but then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. May God bless to our understanding this reading from God's holy word, and to God's name be glory and praise. Amen. What do you really know? Who do you really know? Who really knows you? Really knows you? For now we see in a mirror dimly, Paul says in the beloved love chapter, and a mirror for Paul probably would have been a polished sheet of bronze. Now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, but then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known by God. Knowing and being known, two of our greatest fears in one package. We don't always really want to know everything about the people we love. We tell ourselves we do, but do we really? Much of the time, what we really want to know about them is enough to confirm our notions about them, and then let them go on their ways. Just a few weeks ago, I was talking to my older daughter, who is now 20. We were doing a deep dive into family history. I thought she was old enough for that at this point. And I said to her, I don't know if I should tell you this. This is what I said to her, not you. I don't know if I should tell you this. But it's been a long time ago. I think I can tell you. And she said, hold on. She interrupted me. Hold on. Do I need to know this? And I said, well, probably you don't need to know it. And she said, then don't tell me. And I thought, what restraint. If my father had ever offered to tell one of the family secrets, which he never would have done, I could not have restrained myself like that. Men of his generation don't tell their secrets. They don't. They carry them to their graves. Why? Because of the other great fear that we all have, and that's of being known. Being known. We're afraid to deeply know each other at times, and we're afraid of being truly known. And yet we want both things, don't we? We want someone we really know, and we want to be known by somebody. We've just read such beautiful insights from the love chapter in 1 Corinthians. I could probably preach from this chapter alone for a month of Sundays. Well, no, 3 months. 12 to 15 sermons I could probably get out of this passage. It's a passage with poetic insights, truths hidden in every fold. This beautiful reading makes its regular appearance at weddings. You probably have not been to a church wedding where this was not read, maybe one or two. I like to use it at funerals too, actually. But then your wedding and funeral crowd don't hear anything else but 1 Corinthians 13. How does the love chapter speak to us today? Regular low Sunday morning in February. Nobody's getting married. Well, for one thing, it reminds us that everything we see in this world, we think we see it so clearly, but we see it through a mirror, through polished bronze. Every person we see, and we think we know so well, we see them too in images, in shadows, in reflections. We don't get to see who they really are, who they maybe were intended to be and didn't get to be, or who they're becoming, or who they might have been. Love teaches me how small my perspective is, and it bids me have patience because my vantage point is small. Love bids us, if we can, try to see others as they're meant to be, perhaps as they someday will be, and not always as they are in this moment. Love reminds us that we do not see things as they are. We don't even always see them as they're becoming or as they're meant to be. We see in a mirror dimly. We know things only in part. Knowing and being known, it's scary stuff. They're funny things, two dreaded sides of the same desire. Who do you know really? And by whom are you truly deeply known? Are there 5 people? You know, some of us went to college back in the days when you met your roommate the first day of class. You showed up for school and there was your roommate. It's not done that way anymore. Nowadays, you get to pick your roommate long before you meet them. Your college creates a group on social media, and you meet members of the incoming class, and you kind of court a few prospective roommates in hopes of finding someone you might want to live with. Or else the college has some sort of roommate dating website where it matches your profile with someone who also goes to bed at 8:30 p.m. And it puts you together. And you get to pick the person you want to live with. When I went to college, it was more like an arranged marriage. The college housing office knew 2 things about you and 2 things about your roommate. You're both freshmen, and you both checked the same box where it asked for your sex. Male or female, there were only 2 at that time. And done. It was a match made in heaven. You were both of the same sex, and you were both freshmen. Life is not like that anymore. People are sensitive about who will know them and under what circumstances, and what will be known about them. Today's college freshmen, I know because I've got a freshman and a sophomore. Today's college freshmen grew up in the times of the internet and COVID. And so you can't just throw them in with people. They don't just move in with any old freshman of the same sex. For Generation X and older, do you remember? We couldn't text our friends or snap them. We had to call their parents' house and ask to be put on the phone with them. That was uncomfortable stuff, and maybe even ask for a date. Knowing and being known. It's terrifying stuff. We negotiate it our whole lives long. How much do we want people to know about us? How much do we want to know about them? Knowing and being known. 2 of our deepest desires. To what lengths have you gone to know another person or to be known by another? And ask yourself this one in all honesty. To what lengths do you go daily to not be known by others? At least not in your fullness. You know, we've all got the various editions of ourselves that we pull out at different times. You've got your Facebook self, which isn't the same as your Instagram self. Facebook's a little more buttoned up. Are either of them very much like the person that your adult children will eulogize someday at your memorial service? The love chapter teaches us that we see one another in this world dimly, and the world too we see dimly. We rarely see with objectivity. There's a fuller picture. Maybe someday we'll get to see it. We do not see each other in our fullness at our best. We see shadows, reflections of what another person is or is becoming, what they're meant to be, what they've lived through, what we can imagine them to be. We don't always see these. This is surely, as I said, the second most beloved chapter in the whole Bible after Psalm 23. Even if you are new to church, you probably know 1 Corinthians 13 because of all those weddings that you heard it at. But Paul didn't have weddings in mind when he wrote it. That's funny to think, isn't it? Paul is talking into a conflicted church where some people think that their gifts make them more important than other people. And so they belittle others and dismiss their giftedness. And so Paul is saying, in the midst of his complex theological treatise, which is 1 Corinthians, he pauses, he does a timeout, and he says, listen, guys, if you don't love each other, anything I'm saying here doesn't matter. You just got to love each other. If you can love each other, you'll get along no matter what I say. But love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not boastful or arrogant or rude. And some of you folks are being boastful and arrogant and rude. That's kind of what he's implying, though he's being less direct. He's speaking into a church divided, a time out to sing briefly the praises of love. Now we see things in a mirror dimly. We don't understand each other. We can't judge each other. Someday maybe we'll get to see the full picture. But for now we know only in part. Someday we'll be known just as God knows us all. In other words, we can't judge. Because what do we really know about each other? All of our knowledge is incomplete. What do we know about the universe that we live in? Going back further than your great-grandparents, what do you know about your own ancestors? You might know kind of what country they come from. What do we really know? Do we know their stories? Do we know their names? Do we know what they lived through and endured? And yet we carry their DNA and we look like them. And they gave us our stories. We see in a mirror dimly, but then we will know fully, just as we have been fully known. We fear it and we long for it, to be known and to know. In the great mist of unknowing, in this foggy uncertainty, love can teach us how to see each other and ourselves. Knowing and being known. You know how it is when you know a person, but you can't remember what they do for a living, and you can't ask them because they told you a long time ago. And it was so arcane and so specific that it just went in one ear and out the other, and now you can't ask them because it'll prove that you weren't listening the first time they told you. How well do we know each other? I mean, if you are within earshot, there is a chance that I might have forgotten what you do or did for a living. You told me once. It was too unlike the world I know, and so it was gone. It just flew away like a bird. What do each of us know? What does each of us know about the person who stares back at us in that mirror that Paul talks about? How well do we know ourselves? How well do we want to know ourselves? And if we wanted to know that person, wouldn't we spend more time with them? Listening to their thoughts? Listening to their unnamed desires, listening to their words. If you wanted to know them, then why do you spend so much time avoiding their company, silencing their inner voice, numbing their pain? That is one of the beauties of prayer, and I say this often. Even if there were no God, it would be good for you to pray. Why? Because it makes you face your thoughts. It makes you face what's happening in your life. It makes you name it. It makes you touch it. It makes you pass it along. That's why prayer is good for us. How can we know others if we will not listen to ourselves in our deepest thoughts? St. Paul says here something that I am choking on a little bit. He says that love is not boastful or arrogant or rude. And Jesus tells me to love some people who I think of as boastful and arrogant and rude. Some of them don't even know I exist. But here we are. Love is patient, it's kind, it's not irritable. My problem today is that I'm being told to love someone who is nothing short of boastful and arrogant and rude. Many someones, actually. We live in a world where the likes of Putin and Netanyahu will sacrifice any civilian in their path for the sakes of their bloated egos, and there are some closer to home. This is why it is important to remember that even we do not see the world clearly. Even we see it in reflections and shadows. We see it through a mirror dimly. We do not see things as they are. We do not see people in their fullness. We do not see reality with any objectivity at all. We see things in the moment in which we catch them. And I've said this to you before too. In somebody's story, you're the villain. If only for not letting them make the Pittsburgh left. In somebody's story, they might not even know your name, they probably don't, but you're the bad guy. And I am too, because they caught me at a moment where I wasn't at my best, and it's happened to you as well. But even I do not see what I'm becoming. I don't get to see it. Maybe if we did get to see what we were becoming, we would be too fearful to become it. We don't see the selves that we might have been or that we still might be. This occurred to me recently when I was asked to do a relative's funeral. I asked myself, what's my role here? To toe the party line about this person? Or to tell the truth about this person? What's your role? Then it occurred to me, I don't know the full truth about this person. I don't know who they might have been if circumstances had been in their favor. I don't know who they should have been. I don't know who they missed the chance at being, who they might be in this other reality that Jesus calls the kingdom. I do not know you fully. I know you only dimly and in shadows and in reflections, knowing and being known, our two great longings, our two great fears. What does this mean for us? Well, for one thing, it means that there is one whose name is love, one who sees us and knows us in everything that we are and ought to be. Also this, let us grant each other the grace of imperfect vision, knowing that we don't see the full picture. I do not know what you face when you leave this building today. I do not know what pain you have endured or inflicted in this world. I do not know the joy for which you were created, and maybe you don't even know it yet either. There's so much we don't know. Let us act with forbearance, for we know so little about each other, and yet we love each other all the same. What I know about you is that God wished you into being, into the very set of circumstances in which you find yourself, and that God chooses to live in you and through you. What I know about you is that I do not know your whole story yet, and neither do you. Love teaches me to be patient with you. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now we know only in part, then we will know fully, even as we have been fully known. And now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Amen.